My name is Brianna Flanagan, and today I'll be doing my presentation on the link between our gut and depression. So first, we're going to talk about the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome is a microscopic world within our own body. It contains bacteria, viruses, parasites, and even fungi. And these organisms have a mutualistic relationship between our body and themselves, which means that our body benefits from them being there and they benefit from being in the body. And with this mutualism, they help keep our harmful bacteria in check. So where is the gut microbiome located? It is located within pretty much the entirety of the GI tract, but mostly concentrated in the large intestine. And if these bacteria stray from the large intestine, they can cause issues with our digestion, which is not good. And a lot of these bacteria are anaerobic, which means they require less oxygen, so they're able to thrive in the large intestine. Your gut microbiome also is unique to you. Like no two people have the same microbiome. And this happens, and this is why, because you're first exposed to bacteria through vaginal delivery and breastfeeding. And then as you grow up, you're exposed to different environmental factors that help diversify the organisms in your gut. And obviously, no two people have the same experience in life, so hence the difference. Gut microbiome plays many different roles within the body. It plays roles in the digestive system, the immune system, the nervous system, and even the endocrine system. So in the digestive system, the microbiome is used to break down fiber and complex carbohydrates. And it also helps break down bile to send back to the liver. In the immune system, it helps train our immune system to tell the difference between good bacteria and bad bacteria. And it does this because there are these things called short-chain fatty acids, and they are a byproduct of the gut bacteria. And they help maintain our gut barrier, and they help prevent bad bacteria from escaping into the bloodstream. When there's issues with these short-chain fatty acids, that's when you get issues like C. diff, which is like basically you poop a lot. And also when there's issues with the immune system and the gut, like your immune system can attack the good bacteria instead of the bad bacteria, or it can cause chronic inflammation. That's when you get like autoimmune diseases. And it helps the endocrine system because the gut microbiome is the largest endocrine organ because it helps secrete hormones to help with metabolism. So next, we're going to talk about how is our gut linked to our brain. So the gut-brain axis is a bidirectional communication feedback loop between the brain and the gut. So the brain sends signals to the gut sends signals right back. And you can tell there's a connection because, like, for example, like common phrases that everybody uses, like you're going with your gut, or man, that was gut-wrenching, or like when you're nervous, you have butterflies in your stomach. This is like communication between your brain and your gut. Your gut, you're feeling stressed or you're feeling emotional responses, and then your brain is sending signals back to manifest that as like physical sensations. So fun fact is the gut has the most nerves of anywhere else in the body, even the spinal cord, which is interesting because the spinal cord is part of the nervous system. And basically, this feedback loop, they communicate about hunger, food preferences, cravings, metabolism, mood, gut motility, and even cognitive function. And the cognitive function one is important because we always say like how we feed our brain. So if you don't feed your brain enough, that's when brain fog comes in. So it's interesting to see the connection. So here is where I tried to draw the brain-gut axis. As you can tell, I am not an artist. Not very good, but I tried. So here we have the brain, and here we have the GI system. So basically, the gut is saying, hey, I'm hungry, and it sends this signal to the brain, and the brain's like, why don't you go eat something? So then it sends this signal right back. So these ones, they are in constant communication with each other, sending signals back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. As I mentioned earlier, the gut microbiome plays an important role in the nervous system, and this is called the enteric nervous system, or the ENS. Basically, it is not its own nervous system, it is just a subdivision of the autonomic nervous system, which is used to control our internal organs, as we know, and it resides within the GI tract. It is so innervated by 100 to 500 million nerve cells that is known as the second brain. And it helps control digestion, gut motility, hormone secretion, even immune responses from the gut. And this enteric nervous system, this ENS, can be divided into 3 different parts. There is the intrinsic primary afferent neurons, which are used to detect mechanical and chemical stimuli from food and drink. There are the motor neurons, which are responsible for peristalsis, which, as we know, is the muscle contractions along the GI tract to help push food along. And last but not least, there's the interneurons, which helps regulate the vomiting reflex, which is very important. And the main link between the ENS and the brain is the vagus nerve, which is one of the 12 cranial nerves. It extends all the way from the brain to the gut. And basically, it sends sensory information from the gut to the brain and then motor information from the brain to the gut. So next, we're going to talk about how does our gut affect our mood. Again, really stellar drawing here. So I'm talking about how here the gut microbiome helps stimulate the production of serotonin. In the stomach, like all the little smiley faces here, 90% of serotonin and 50% of dopamine are produced in the gut. And these, as we know, are like the happy hormones, the happy neurotransmitters. Yay! But then when there's inflammation or like you're having issues like stomach issues, that causes less serotonin production, which affects your mood, because if you're producing less of the happy hormone, then you're gonna not feel great. As you can tell by this little guy here who's saying, my tummy hurts. Like I mentioned earlier, inflammation plays a big role in your mood. And basically, inflammation is bad news for your mood. So the more inflammation that you have in the stomach, like when you're bloated, you're feeling gross, you're going to feel less happy. And so basically, the gut microbiome, it is full of anti-inflammatory bacteria and inflammatory bacteria. There's supposed to be more anti-inflammatory bacteria, but there's been studies done that people with depression, when their gut microbiome was tested through like stool samples, it was shown that they had more inflammatory bacteria, which is contributing to less serotonin production and just more inflammation, which is causing them to be unhappy. And as we know, this gut microbiome, this is the gut bacteria. It prevents toxins from entering the bloodstream. So when it's leaky, permeable, it sends signals to the brain that all is not well, causes you to be more stressed, and it causes inflammation. And there are these things called cytokines, which they're basically like, they cause inflammation. And when there's more cytokines, you have more inflammation. And the thing with cytokines is they're not great, because the more stressed you are, the more cytokines are produced, and the more cytokines produced, the more inflammation. And the cytokines can cross the blood-brain barrier, so they can get into the brain and they can dysregulate neurotransmitter release, causing you to feel more unhappy because they're not producing serotonin and dopamine. Now, there's short-chain fatty acids, which we talked about earlier, are the byproduct of gut microbiota, and they're supposed to help maintain the gut barrier, but then they exert anti-inflammatory effects on the brain. So, but when there's less of them, then you're going to be more inflamed and you're going to be more depressed. And so these short-chain fatty acids are reduced in people with depression. And with chronic inflammation, that's when you get diseases like irritable bowel syndrome or IBS. And apparently 30 to 40% of people deal with bowel issues, and 25% of that 30 to 40% have depression. So there is a very clear link between inflammation and depression. So to know if you have a bad gut microbiome, there's some symptoms. You have like excessive bloating, gas pain, poor digestion, lower abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, and this thing called dysbiosis, which is when there's an unbalanced or unhealthy gut microbiome. It means there's an overgrowth of the bad bacteria and a loss of the good bacteria. And it's like a loss of the bacterial diversity. Last but not least, how to heal your gut-brain axis. So there's unfortunately no miracle treatment. There's just theories and stuff you can try. There's these things called prebiotics, which are dietary fibers that feed the gut bacteria. And then there's probiotics, which are microbes that you can ingest that feed the colon, like fermented foods, like Greek yogurt. There's a fecal transplant, which is when they take healthy gut microbiome, like healthy stool from somebody, and give it to somebody with not a healthy gut microbiome. Like this is used to treat C. diff. There's relaxation therapy, which is supposed to be calming and for the body, muscle relaxation. There's cognitive behavioral therapy, which is where you talk to a therapist about changing your thoughts, emotions, and stress responses, and it's supposed to help people with depression, and it even helps with your mood and it helps with your gut. There's antidepressants, which medication prescribed by psychiatrists to fight depression. And again, better mood, better gut. There's antibiotics, which can help get rid of the overgrowth of bad bacteria, but just be careful not to use them too often because then you get rid of the good bacteria too. And there's these elimination diets, which eliminate different foods one at a time to see if there's a reaction from your gut, like people who cut out gluten and stuff. But then also, these diets want you to eat more fiber, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory foods. And then here is just the list of references I used for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you were able to learn about the link between our gut and depression. Thank you.